Hi, everyone. I'm going to wait a couple more minutes to see if anyone else logs on, and then we'll get started. Okay, let's just jump into it. Hi, everyone. My name is Rachel Moten, and I use she, her pronouns. I'm one of the officers in NYFA's Grants and Awards Department. This presentation is an info session for the NYC Women's Fund Music category. The NYC Women's Fund is a signature initiative that addresses the underrepresentation of women in the entertainment industry. The fund provides grants to encourage and support the creation of content that reflects the voices and perspectives of all who identify as women. Okay, so for today's agenda, we'll start off with an overview of what the music category is. We'll talk about eligible projects and eligibility criteria. I'll discuss how to apply. We'll review all the different aspects of the application form. We'll also do a review of the evaluation and selection process. And then we'll finally have a Q&A session where we'll be featuring a guest grantee, Britt Ashford. Please submit any questions that you have in the chat or in the Q&A function, and I will answer them at the end of the presentation. The fund provides grants to encourage and support the creation of content that reflect the voices and perspectives of all who identify as women. The fund provides grants to support the production of a new EP, album, or music video for yet to be released work. The maximum potential grant in the music category is $20,000. The grant funds projects in any musical genre. Eligible music genres include, but are not limited to, alternative, metal, new wave, rock, Americana, bluegrass, blues, country, folk, dance, disco, electronic, gospel, hip hop, rap, Latin, merengue, salsa, musical theater and opera, classical, contemporary classical, new music, experimental, sound, and jazz. So as far as eligible projects, the fund provides grants to support the production of a new EP, album, or music video for yet to be released work. So as far as recording an EP or album, recordings must be an original studio recorded EP or album. They must feature a minimum total playing time of 15 minutes with at least 3 distinct tracks, or an album with a minimum total playing time of 30 minutes with no minimum track requirement. For filming and producing a music video, applicants may apply for funding to create a music video of an original studio recorded track. For eligibility criteria, projects must be made by, for, or about women or women identifying individuals. Projects must be ready for production at the time of application and be released by March 31st, 2025. Completed projects must be distributed either physically or digitally, whether by download or streaming. The applicant, or if different, the recipient of funds, must be a current resident of New York City and live in one of the 5 boroughs. The applicant can be a producer, a composer, a solo musician, an ensemble, a band, or an orchestra, and you can be not-for-profit or commercial. Musicians, ensembles, bands, or orchestras cannot currently be represented by a major label. Independent labels are accepted. Artists to be recorded must provide documentation of the minimum of 2 of the following: a growing fan base, which could be shown by screenshots of Instagram, TikTok, or Twitter followers, recent or current performance schedule for local, international, or national performances, media coverage, awards and honors, and previous funding. The funds must be used to complete the project outlined in the application form. Funds may be allocated as the applicant needs to complete the project. However, funds cannot be used to purchase capital goods. Projects also must follow at least one of the 2 criteria. One option is that 75% of rehearsal and recording dates take place in New York City, or 75% of the production costs are qualified production costs. Funds can be used for any purpose critical to the completion of the project. So this is a guide on how to apply. You'll begin by creating a free submittable account, and then you can start your online application. In order to gain access to the application, though, you'll have to complete an eligibility form, and then you can move on to filling out the application online. We don't accept hard copies, and then you can submit your application, and then we'll send you an email confirmation to the email you used to sign up for submittable with. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the application form. As far as the information you'll have to submit, you'll include your applicant information. So this is like your basic information: your name, your address, your email, contact info. Then you'll submit the project name and running time, or the proposed length of the album. You'll answer a question about your project overview. There will be a question that asks, how does your project prominently feature a women-identified perspective? We'll also ask you about the production schedule and plans, your plans for promotion and distribution. We'll have a question about fan base and industry support. We'll ask for artist bios and work samples. We'll also ask for a budget where you have to include all income and expenses and say a specific total amount that you're requesting. And then we'll have a budget narrative question that asks how you will spend the grant. And then there are some additional questions that are specific to whatever application that you're applying for. Okay, so for work samples, we require 3 work samples of 3 to 5 minutes each related to the project which you're seeking support or reflective of the work to be recorded. If available, you can submit a demo of the music that's to be recorded, and then you have the option of submitting a score or lyric sheet for the work that's to be recorded. And then I also have listed here the acceptable file types. Okay, and as far as the budget, I've included a screenshot here of the application, and there are 2 options of budgets you can download. You can use the provided template or update your own or upload your own budget. And here is an image of what it looks like. Please note that applicants do not need to fill out all budget lines. Input expenses and income reflect the total projected expenses for the full project and give a sense of the scope of your entire proposed project. Okay, there's also a section of demographic questions. NYFA requires that all grant applicants complete a demographic questionnaire located at the bottom of the grant application. The answers to these questions will not impact an applicant's review by the selection panel. The answers to these questions remain anonymous, and there's also the option of choosing prefer not to say when responding to all demographic questions. NYFA is committed to supporting artists from every background and at all stages of their creative careers. We strongly encourage artists of color, LGBTQ+ artists, and artists with disabilities to apply. To request an accommodation or if you need assistance in applying, you can contact me directly at NYC Women's Fund at NYFA.org or give me a call at 212-366-6900 extension 213. We do ask that request for accommodation be made as soon as possible, preferably no later than October 11th. And here we have a couple final questions and tips for the application. The applicants can only be submitted in one category with one project. This is a project-based grant. The NYC Women's Fund is a finishing grant. And of course, if you have questions, please reach out. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the evaluation and selection process. All applications are peer reviewed by selection panels comprised of discipline-specific industry professionals. All applications are reviewed by the respective selection panel. Selection panelists change every year per category. Applications are reviewed over multiple elimination rounds. All applications are checked by NYFA staff for eligibility. Eligible applications are scored by peer review panels based on the following evaluation criteria: creative and artistic merit, prominent women's perspective, and project feasibility. And also the final grant award amounts are determined by the selection panel. Okay, so now we're going to move into the section where we bring up our guest grantee, Britton Ashford. And here's a little bit of background information on her. She's a Brooklyn-based performer and songwriter. She received funding for a music video for the song Hand Wringing in the Wings from her latest album, Trotter.
So if you can hear me, I'm trying to start video and it says unable to start video because the host stopped it.
Let me see. Are you able to start video now?
Let's try it. All right, there we go. I'm okay. Thank you. Sorry.
No, of course. Thank you for joining.
Sorry, I feel like you were talking about me.
No, totally, it's fine. But yeah, I was just going to explain some of the details of your music video. And I actually think it's really cool. I'm a filmmaker and like this is the idea of a single shot is like really exciting to me. So in the music video, Britton uses a single shot to visually outline the pressure we place on artists and performers, following a narrator as she laments while prepping for a performance. Okay, so I don't know how we want to start this. I don't know if you want to introduce yourself, since I like kind of did like a little overview, like what would be most comfortable for you?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say like sort of in a nutshell, I consider myself a songwriter, a composer, as well as a performer. And my focus the entire time I've been in New York has been music. And I live in Brooklyn. And gosh, I think I was thinking about like expanded bio, but you know, I've spent my entire career making music and I've sort of dabbled in theater. And I did have a little success doing some theater that I think some folks know me for, which is actually sort of what this song and this concept of this video is based on my time in the theater. So it sort of dovetails nicely into what I pitched for my application.
Amazing. Well, we can just jump into a couple questions that I have for you. And the first one is, can you just tell us a bit about the project that the Women's Fund supported? I know I kind of did like an overview of it, but you are the artist, you can go more in depth.
Yeah, I want to preface this with, I was so excited to make this video and it felt very ambitious. And I've made lots of other music videos, including 3 other music videos for the album that this was part of that came out in May called Trotter. But this was the one I really wanted to make, but I like just didn't have the resources for it. So I was really excited to pitch it. But when I applied for the grant, it was long before the album was coming out. And when I received the grant, I had kind of like given up on the idea of making it. And so it was such a delight and a surprise. And I think I literally wept when I received the email and I was going to have the money to make this project. And that's sort of like, I just, yeah, prefacing it with like, I don't want to say forgotten. I had given up the idea that this video would get made. So I'm just so grateful to the Women's Fund for giving me the resources to make this project. And yeah, it was really something that feels very personal to me. And yeah, I'm just really grateful that I got to make it.
I'm really excited that you were able to make it too. It's a really nice video, and I really was honestly kind of inspired by it. And I think it was just overall really cool. But thank you again for sharing that. Let's talk a little bit about the application process. I know it's a bit competitive. Do you have any insights into how you crafted your application, or what do you think made your proposal stand out?
I do also, I'll preface this by saying this was my second time applying for the grant. And so for anyone who feels discouraged that they've applied before, or that because it is so competitive that they've applied before and they didn't get it, or maybe they're thinking about applying and know that it's competitive and aren't sure, like that, just do it. And I learned a lot the first time I did it, because even just really going through it, and I started the application very early and I submitted it very late, but I sort of like knew all the working pieces. And there's a lot of things that I think, particularly if someone is just getting started and doesn't entirely understand the back end of, so like one of the things is like demonstrate that you have a growing fan base, which I think the first time I looked at that, I was like, gosh, like how do I, like I know I do, I can like see, like I know I have more followers this year than I had last year, but like how do I demonstrate that? Where do you find those metrics? How do you, I think you said like you can include screenshots, and that's what I did. Like I think I had like a chart. I made like an Excel spreadsheet, and then I included the screenshots of basically showing growing fan base over time. But that is all stuff that like takes time to find and dig up. And so knowing one, that you have to do it, and two, more importantly, knowing where to find that information is just going to save you so much grief. If you're an 11th hour person, like let's face it, a lot of people are, like no shame of knowing that like those are all things you have to find. And yeah, just because it feels competitive doesn't mean that you don't have all the things. You just need to know where to find them and be as concise as possible. I think for me, that's my only logic. Again, like I look at this and I'm like, gosh, I have a hard time. I'm like, oh yeah, I got that. That's great. It's really exciting.
Cool. Okay. What were your biggest challenges during the project, if any?
You know, honestly, again, I wasn't anticipating making the video because I just didn't have the money to do it. And when I got notice that I'd received the grant, I was like, oh, like we got to roll. Like, you know, the album comes out in May, and I think that folks were alerted maybe in February, January. I can't exactly remember.
March, yeah, mid-March.
Yeah, I was like, the turnaround was really quick. And so for the video to exist in the world before the album came out would mean like getting it done. And the first person I contacted is my friend Kelly. She's a director and she's awesome, and a producer, and I love her so much. She lives north of the city. And I was just like, hey, what do you think? We got cash. Do you want to do it? So just the biggest challenge was just getting all the people together that we wanted to work with. And then ultimately finding this space, because I wanted to do this like very specific vision. And turns out like finding a space in the 5 boroughs to do something like this is a little tricky.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I mean, I think with any project, if it's a music video, and for anyone out there who's like, that doesn't apply to me because I'm making an album or making a piece of theater, but there's so many moving parts. And I think just giving the biggest challenge, I think, was just like giving my brain enough space to be like, here's how we do it. And I'm really grateful to Kelly, because she helped so much, like from the producer side, just like she knows all these people because that's her world. Like
Yeah.
I make the music. Like I needed her help, and I pitched her the idea, and thankfully she was like, yes, let's do it. Because she could have been like, I'm booked for the next 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
She was like, not only was she like, yes, let's do it. Yes, we can do it on that budget. I think we booked a date like less than a month out for making this whole thing happen, which is like truly bananas. Like if you watch the video, and as our DP, really lovely fellow Mark Raker, also did a lot of work for much less than I'm sure he normally makes. But he was like, yeah, so normally in the business for a continuous shot for 30 seconds of a continuous shot, we might rehearse for 4 days.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we got to the space where we were shooting at 8 a.m. and we had to be out by 4 or 5 p.m. If that gives you an idea of just how quickly we had to figure it out and turn it around. So a challenge, but a fun one.
Yeah, I totally understand. And then finally, just do you have any final advice for the applicants?
I say, when thinking about, and I say this not fully knowing like what sort of the folks who are looking applications are looking for. But I know that for me, having a really clear idea of what I wanted to do, and also like putting myself and like my experience as a woman and as a performer, like putting that sort of at the center of my project, I think was really helpful.
Mhm.
I also think just like my budget, because I'd already made a music video, like I really knew how much certain things were going to cost. So I think it was really, my budget was very detailed.
Yeah.
I think that like looked good on the application to be like, no, specifically, this is why I'm asking for this much money, and this is what I want to do with it. And which also really important. I think a lot of people don't think about artist fees. Like
Mhm.
you're making an album or you're making a video, gosh, well, you got to pay, all the people who are working cameras, you need to pay your actors, you need to pay who's mixing your album, or like all these pieces, and they don't often think about themselves. And I definitely in my budget included my own artist fee. It was modest and not like more than other people were making, but like just showing that your art has value and why it's important to you, but also like in the big picture.
Wow. Okay. Well, thank you so much for sharing all that. That was very helpful. Does anyone have any questions for Britton in the chat? I'm checking now and I'm not seeing any, so I will release you, but thank you so much for being a part of this. This was super helpful.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah. Anytime. And if anyone who is watching this, you can always, shoot me a message on Instagram. Oh, it looks like someone just asked if it's possible to see my budget.
That would be up to you if you feel comfortable sharing it with people, if they want to directly contact you about it. But of course, it's all your idea, whatever you think is most comfortable for you.
Yeah. I'm happy. Jamie, if you're an Instagram user, you can send me a message there.
Yeah, and I believe we have your Instagram up here too. Yeah.
That's definitely, I feel like I don't really hang out on Twitter very much anymore. It exists, but like I'm not like over there. But Instagram, I kind of poke around that a lot.
Okay.
And yeah,
Oh, go ahead.
I was just saying, it just looks like someone else asked about if the creative team is confirmed or tentative. I will say for my application, I knew some of the people I was going to work with, but not everyone. Like I had put Kelly down as my director,
Mhm.
but I didn't necessarily know, because you can't really know like a year from now or 6 months from now or 2 years from now who is going to be available.
Yeah.
Having a strong idea of like your creative team, like if you have a director you want to work with. But I think there's no, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there's no you don't have to like stick to that.
Yeah, you don't.
And I guess the last question, or first question, regarding how the project reflected a woman's perspective. I mean, again, it's like I put myself at the center of my project, and I talk a little bit about sort of and the video tells this story. It's basically sort of the unrealistic expectations we put on performers. And, you know, it opens up with a shot. I think I'm drinking a cup of coffee. I look kind of haggard. I was, but you know, the goal was also like, look real. Like, this is me in the morning, like my eyebrows aren't crooked, you know, like, and, you know, this idea, it's like literally someone passes in front of the camera, and then I'm like, I'm wearing this ridiculous wig, and then like I'm like doing this little dance, and then like sort of just being like, you know, like pushed around, you know, the idea that for me, it feels unique, the expectations I think that women in particular face as performers, as far as even like having families, you know, like I'm 40. And I used to feel a lot of like fear about telling people that, like, I'm 40, like, oh no, no one's going to want to hire me. And now I'm like, I don't care. You know, like,
Yeah.
I want people who are in their, whatever age you are, to be like, oh yeah, like there's still time to do the things you want to do, but there is like an acute pressure, I think, on women as you approach a certain age, sort of like, well, you know, like, oh, do you want a family, you know, or something like that. And but there's still this expectation of sacrifice. And so I think, like, for me, this project, that was something I talked about, is sort of the expectations we place on women in performing arts, that they need to be X, Y, and Z. And if they want to do this, they have to do this, or they can't do that. And so that's sort of that's the like really small, that's the micro version of that, and how I framed it.
Cool. Someone is asking for your budget. Did you include marketing costs?
I can't remember. I will say that on the application, you're only allowed to use a certain percentage of the grant for marketing costs. And I might have included a small number. I did a really modest PR campaign for like my entire album, which included this video, but I think I put in like a small number. Like I did a $1,500 PR campaign, which in the world of PR campaigns is like, you know, it's nothing.
Yeah.
And so I didn't even include that entire number. But I think that there was like a small amount in the budget for marketing.
Yeah. I believe you can only spend 20% of your budget on marketing.
Which, quite frankly, I don't know. This is my opinion, but it's like, make your art, because there's so many people making art, and unless you're at a point in your career where you can pay someone to, or like you know the person at the New York Times who will write about you, like, you can't buy that.
Yeah.
So you're gonna pay someone $10,000. I don't know, just like, I don't have a lot of faith in paying just a ton of money for that stuff. And that's like one of the things I really love about this grant, is it's just like, you don't need to worry about, you know, making your money back. Someone's giving you this money to make your beautiful art, which is more important than like how many people see it on whatever. Like, TikTok isn't for art anyway. Like, it's for fun. You know, it's like, it can be for art, but like, I'm going to say that's not the overall user experience, is not looking for art. Although I mean, there's no rule that says you can't use this to make something fun and delightful and thought-provoking.
And I'm checking to see if we have any final questions for you. I think that's everything. So again, thank you so much for joining us and being so open to like sharing your budget and other details about your project as well. Like we said, you can message Britton at Kitten Donut on Instagram. And yeah, thank you again so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for giving me money to make this project.
Okay, bye-bye. Okay, now I'll answer some of the questions in the chat. Please send them in the Q&A so that I can see them. We have a question that says, when you say unreleased, does an EP qualify if some of the songs of it have already been released as singles? No, the music has to be completely unreleased in order for you to qualify for this opportunity. There is another question that says, when you apply, can you allocate funds for both an album and a video? For example, use the funds to finish recording and also make a music video, or do they have to stay completely separate? No, you can allocate funds for both. Another question asks, what are capital goods and what types of work samples must be submitted? Capital goods would be like purchasing like a laptop or like other machines or like equipment. And we don't want you to use the grant for that because we're trying to focus on like the finishing funds for the actual project. So that wouldn't be allowed. And as far as work samples, I'll scroll back up so we can look at it together. There has to be 3 work samples related to the project that you're seeking support or reflective of the work to be recorded. So it doesn't necessarily have to be like exactly what you're recording, but just something similar so that the panelists can get an idea of what you're wanting to work on. Okay, another question is it okay in your application that your creative team is tentative for a music video, or should your creative team be confirmed? Your team doesn't have to be confirmed. Like Britton said, like things change as you work on your projects or whatever. And over time, of course, like if your director is unavailable and you have to like sub a new one in, that's totally fine. We do ask for bios of your creative team when you apply, but if things change and you were awarded the grant, that's totally cool. There's a question that says, I'm wondering how many music grants are typically awarded and whether there are quotas for different genres. It varies from year to year. The panelists the panelists have like the full, I guess like they're in charge of determining who's receiving the grants each year. And there's no specific quotas. I will say that, again, like it varies from year to year. I'm sorry, I don't have the exact numbers off top, but it does change. Okay, more questions. How far in the production your work sample should be? Should all the songs be fully arranged, composed, and orchestrated by the time of application? Your work samples do not have to be exactly related to the project that you're seeking support for. So no, it does not have to be completely arranged and composed. And then the second part of this question is it important that your project members will also show a growing fan base? Does including famous artists help with the application? This is kind of a hard question to answer because I'm not a panelist, so I don't know exactly what they'll be looking for with this. But I do think it is important to show a growing fan base because that's one of the questions that they are asking. I don't think that it's impossible to like receive a grant if you have a smaller fan base, but I believe that they're just looking to see that you're active in the industry. There's another question that says, does music releases only as a YouTube video count as a release? In my case, only one song on the album fits this description. No, you can also count it as having it uploaded to Spotify or SoundCloud or any website like that where you can upload and music can be listened to for free. Does purchasing recording software count as capital goods? No, if it's the recording software that you need to like complete the project, no, would not count as capital goods. But if you're purchasing like the actual equipment, then that would be considered capital goods. If I'm doing a music video, can I include the following items? Craft services, set building, wardrobe, costuming, audio recording of the song to be included in the music video. Yes, the budget has spaces for all of that where you can include all of the details. There's a question that says, do you prefer work samples that are works in progress, which might not be developed and polished, or is it better to send something that's completed in the past related to the new work? Again, this is kind of a difficult question for me to answer because it's really going to be based on what the panelists are looking for. I personally would probably submit an example of both if you're kind of torn between the two. Okay, is it possible to get funding for something you've already recorded and mixed, but won't have been released before the grant has been awarded? In other words, being able to reimburse yourself. This is a great question. No, because the funds cannot be applied retroactively. Can your work samples be previously recorded and released works if they still reflect the new project to be recorded? Yes, that's totally fine. Can distribution include funds to create a physical product such as a CD or vinyl records? Yes, that's also fine. Another question is, does the project crew need to involve mostly women, or is it okay if the leader of the project is a woman? There's no restrictions on who has to be a part of the project crew. The question about the female perspective is only in the application, like for you to show how your project features a prominent woman perspective. You don't have to specifically only hire women to work on the project with you. There is a question that says, what is considered a growing fan base? Is it over a certain amount, like 5,000 followers, etc.? No, I believe that when you apply, it's just more of like asking you to be able to show that you're actively working in the industry. There's no like limit on how many followers you have to have or like specific number of follower amount that you need to be able to be awarded this grant. Someone asks, if I'm applying for a music video budget, could I send a demo of the unreleased song? Or does the song already need to be released? The song can be unreleased for this because we're trying to make projects that are new. You would be able to submit something new for this. For an album recording, is it required to have original compositions? I honestly don't know the answer to that question. I can check offline for you. And if you can send me an email, Jamil, I can check offline and get the answer for that for you, but I'm honestly not certain. And then do we have any final questions? Someone asked, wait, so can the single be released and you use the funds for the music video? No, it has to be a new single that you haven't released yet. Another question asked, for your shooting location, can it be in a commercial building like a photo studio or an office? Yeah, we don't have any specific requirements on shooting locations for music videos. If you have a recording that is coming out in April, can you apply to make a video for it? Yes, with the timeline, if you're applying for it now and you are planning for it to come out in April, that would be fine because notifications will come out in March. So you'll know by March if you're receiving this grant or not. For artist fees, can you give yourself an artist fee or only for the artist you hire? You can pay yourself your artist fee when you apply. That can be included in your budget. Okay, another question. Will the funds be paid out immediately or is it paid out over a scheduled time? How do you pay out everyone in advance? This is a good question. The funds are split up into 3 different payments. So the first payment you'll receive is 50% of the total grant award. The second payment is going to be 40%. And in order to get that, you have to submit an interim report that just basically shows what you've worked on. And then finally, you'll receive the last 10% when you're completely finished your project and you've completed the public access requirement, and you will receive that final 10%. Someone asked, when will the recipients be notified if they receive the grant? Most likely in March. I'm not sure exactly like what time or what week in March, but at some point in March, you will know. To clarify about a grant for an album, do all the singles have to be released after we receive the grant? Yeah, because you can't apply the funds retroactively. You would have to be releasing this, like your music, April onward, because you would find out in March. Are you able to budget in time, space to finish writing your project? Yeah, your budget can be whatever you think is necessary to include. The more detailed the budget, I think, is going to be what's most helpful for the panel to understand exactly what you're trying to do. So yeah, you can totally include that as well. Someone asked, if you make a video, how do you do a public access event? This is a good question. Your public access would be just making sure that it's free and available for people to view. So for example, putting it on Vimeo or YouTube would fulfill that because people can access it for free. Someone asked, is it one recipient for the grant or several? There are several recipients for each category. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but it varies from year to year. At the end, do you have to save every single receipt, or can you submit a final document that lists everything in table format? You don't have to save every single receipt. We have a section where you will upload your budget and just specify what you spent the grant money on, and then we'll just review that as your final report. And do we have any other questions? I believe that that's all the questions. I will check one more time to see if there's anything else. Oh, okay. Question. Can the songs contain swear words and or sexual lyrics? Yeah, there's no like specific content guides for the application. There's a question to ask, what is a reasonable artist fee? If you're paying yourself, is there a range? There is no specific range that we ask for, and artist fees, I guess, would vary from project to project. I personally would not do like a huge artist fee for myself, because even though I do believe in like paying yourself as an artist, I personally wouldn't like put a lot of money towards me directly. But this is not anything that like the panel like has specifics around. So you can choose honestly whatever you'd want it to be. Can the fund include an event like a video release, gathering, or event? Yeah, you can include that as part of your marketing, but it would have to be under 20% of your budget. And there's another question that says, can costs include promotional materials? Yes, and that would be considered marketing. It will also have to be under 20% of your budget. Over how many years would you like to see a growing fan base? Again, this is a question that's hard to answer because the panelists are going to be looking at that. We don't have like a specific like amount of time that you have to be like working in the industry to be able to receive this grant. So it really is just up to you as an artist to list how many years that you think would be the most appropriate to show. If I'm putting original music to an original video as well, can I present this as my project? Can you elaborate a little bit on that question, Fern? And I'll come back to you. And then there's another question that says, can you include liability insurance costs? Yes, of course, you can include insurance costs. Can costs include promotional materials? Yes, but it would be a part of marketing and it would have to be under 20% of your entire budget. Do we have any additional questions? When doing music video credits, you have to include the logo of NYFA and wording. Yeah, there is a specific logo that you'll have to include in the credits of your project. And we send all that information to you after you're awarded the grant. Does the entire budget, can the entire budget be more than 20,000? Yes, it can be. NYFA can be supporting like a smaller part of your total budget, but when you list out all the information in your budget, still be specific about where the 20K would be going. If you request 20K, is it possible to be awarded less than you need? Yes, the panel determines the exact amounts that are awarded, and it can potentially be under the total amount that you asked for. Are there opportunities for NYFA staff to review your applications prior to submission? Unfortunately, we don't do that for this opportunity. So no. Would it be okay to record the album outside of New York City if everyone who's involved and paid is from New York City? I honestly am not sure on that. I would have to check and get back to you. But I do believe off top that you have to have recorded it in New York, but I'll double check and I can answer that question later. How many songs do I have to have written? There's no specifics around how many songs. I do know that when you apply, though, we ask, hold on one second, I'll bring it back up for y'all to look at. Here is the eligibility around how long the project has to be. So must feature a minimal total playing time of 15 minutes with at least 3 distinct tracks, or an album with a minimum total playing time of 30 minutes with no minimum track requirement. There's another question to ask. Is there a minimum for music videos as far as time? And no, there's no minimum. There's another question to ask. Who are the panelists for this grant? Are they artists from the community or general members of NYFA? NYFA members are not, or NYFA staff is not involved in the panel. The panel is comprised of different artists who are New York City based. There's actually a section in here that kind of goes more into detail about that. Right here. And we don't release the names of the selection panel until after the grants have been awarded. Will we have access to this recording and the slides later? Yes, this video will be posted on NYFA's YouTube channel later this week. Would it be okay to have an independent label release the album through a license deal where I'll still own the master? Well, where I'll still own the master to the album. Yeah, it's okay for an independent label to release the album. Can we find out who were the past selection panelists somewhere? Yes, on the NYFA website, if you look, there's a section that lists all the previous winners, and at the bottom of each section is a list of all the panelists. If your music is connected to a public art installation, can you add that, and would that be considered marketing? Honestly, I would need more information about that to answer this question. I believe that it wouldn't be considered marketing. And also, if it's a public art installation, that would fulfill your your free public access. So that would be fine to do, but I'm not sure if it would be considered marketing. If you were awarded a grant from NYFA in the past, will that be considered in the application? Or is it a fresh application every cycle that you are eligible? Yeah, it would be considered a fresh application. That's one of the reasons why we ask for you to submit a new project every time you apply for a different cycle. There's expansion on the question about the art installation. If I make a song, then create an art installation for people to view and interact with the props from the video. No, that would not be considered marketing. Okay, another question is, are older artists who have a long established fan base eligible? I've been doing music for a long time, but wasn't able to record because of my multi-decade caregiving responsibilities. Yes, anyone's eligible. It doesn't matter how long your fan base has been established. Do we have any final questions? We're almost at 3, but I'm still available to answer more if anyone has any other concerns or questions. Can I create the album initially in my home-based music studio? Yeah, there's no specific requirements around where you create your album other than it being in New York City. You combine an EP with a music video. For example, I create an EP, then fund a music video to go along with one of the songs. Yes, you can do that. Someone asked me to define EP. EP stands for extended play, and it's basically just a musical release that's shorter than a full-length album. I believe that it traditionally includes 3 to 5 tracks or 4 to 6 tracks. Does NYFA own any copyright or license to my work or video after I completed it? No, we don't own any copyright or license to your work or your video after you completed it. We do just ask for you to credit us. There's information about crediting that would be sent out to you if you were awarded the grant. Do we have any final questions? How long after you are awarded do you receive your first set of funding? Honestly, I believe the time of this varies. I do think that with the previous cycle, so cycle 4, it took about a month, but I don't believe there's like a confirmed timeline of when you receive funding. Can my 17-year-old daughter apply for this opportunity? No, I believe you have to be 18 to apply for this grant. I can double check on that, but I'm pretty sure that the age would be 18. For your second set of funding, is that when you request it or when they have a date? Oh, there's no set date for you to receive your second set of funding. It's just when you reach a milestone. So the options are when you reach picture lock with your music video, or when you've completely recorded your project, that's when you would reach out to us and we would send you an interim report that you would fill out. And that would release the next set of funding. Someone asked what is considered marketing part of the budget. That would be anything from like buying ads on social media to creating like posters or anything that would promote your project. Any final questions before we wrap this up? I believe this question is in reference to the age for the application. They say, how can I confirm? You can reach out directly to me. I'll scroll back to this with my email and we can talk about it offline, but the email would be nycwomensfund@nyfa.org. Okay, so let's wrap this up. If anyone has any additional questions, you can visit nyfa.org/NYC Women's Fund. The guidelines and all of the other like frequently asked questions are listed there. And of course, you can contact me. My email is nycwomensfund@nyfa.org, and I will answer any additional questions. Thank you all for joining us today. And sorry, we had one more question. Oh, no, it actually was not a question. It was just a thank you. No, thank you all for attending this. I really appreciate it. Okay, have a good day.